Hello guys and welcome to this video. Today I'll be modifying this SKX007 into this. This is the SKX007 Yachtmaster, the original black dial with that nice silver bezel, sub-style bezel, Yachtmaster insert, polished chapter ring, Mercedes hands with an orange seconds hand. I've put it on this orange strap, but I think this belongs on a nice Jubilee bracelet really. And yeah, pretty impressive. I think you'll agree. Really nice, interesting looking watch. So keep watching to see the whole build process. This is an SKX007 that came from a friend of mine here in Dubai. It's a brand new model, actually. I ordered it in for him. So if you're interested in any of my work as a Seiko modder in Dubai, please follow me at SeikoMODS Dubai on Instagram. I'll leave a link in the description. Also subscribe to this channel if you like what I'm doing. It will really support me and help me out. So first things first, we are going to remove the strap. And then we're going to focus on changing the crystal, bezel, inserts, hands on the dial, all of that stuff. I'll show you as much of it as I can in this setup, and let's see how this mod goes. So now the strap's off, we are going to focus first on basically stripping the watch down. So removing the case back, taking the movement out, and removing the bezel and the crystal. So to do that, first of all, we need to open the case back, and I'll be using this case back opening tool just to do that quickly for you. So the case back's off now, and I'm just removed the gasket as well, so it's out of the way. Next thing we're going to do is take the crown out. So we're going to unscrew it and push on this. Let me zoom in. This tiny little dot here. Just above the Seiko, just there, it looks like a ballpoint pen mark, and that will release the crown and allow me to pop it out. Again, quite tricky to do some of this at this angle, so I'll just show you little updates as we go. Now the crown's out, I'm just gonna lift the movement, just gently using this little pointy tool, and we're going to flip the dial and hands out onto this little mat, like so, and cover it. So we're going to come back to this later. These little cases from DLW are actually really useful for things like this. So we're going to focus on the bezel for now and leave this one until we do the hands a bit later on. So to get the bezel off, I have just pushed on this side a little bit just to give it a bit of a gap, enough to slide this removal tool in. This was actually really quite a tight bezel in terms of its fit against the case, so I was a bit concerned about getting it off without scratching the case. But now we should be able to pry it off just gently, like so. And the whole bezel removes with the insert, of course. We're not actually going to use this bezel or insert, so I'll put that away, and perhaps the client will want to switch it back at some point or use it in a different watch, so there's no point disassembling this. So that's going away. Just having a look, yep, no scratches or marks on the case from removing it. The click spring is intact and looking fine, so again I'll remove that for now before we tackle the crystal. Now I'm going to be popping the crystal out from this side, and the chapter ring is going to come with it. We'll come back to the chapter ring because I know the client Rob wants to see a couple different options for the chapter ring, actually, to use the existing one and a new one, so I'll try and make that happen now. So I've just popped the crystal out and three things came out. It was the chapter ring, the crystal, and the crystal gasket. We are going to swap the crystal to a sapphire, so I'm going to put this to one side and reuse the gasket in a minute. However, as Rob's interested in seeing what the different chapter rings can look like, we've got this, which is a standard chapter ring, and we have this, which is a polished chapter ring. So what I'm going to do is I'll put the polished one in first. I'll gently put the dial back in, and I'll put the crystal and bezel on top loosely to take a couple pictures and see which one he actually prefers. I think I'd prefer the polished one, but it's up to him at the end of the day. It's his watch. So we will see what both of those look like, and I'll show you them on this video as well. So here's the mock-up of the watch with the polished chapter ring. It's got quite a lot of reflection inside the dial. There are some nice polished parts on the insert and the case, of course, as well. So I think it looks quite nice like this. But let's have a look at the standard insert as well. So here's the other option for Rob, which is the standard OEM chapter ring. This one came with the watch originally. It does make the dial maybe appear a little bigger, and you've got those minute markers on there. So for someone like me, I might prefer to have the accuracy of the minute markers, but then again, this is only the 7S26 movement, so you know, you're not buying this movement if you are super into accuracy. For the look, I'd say the polished one works better in my opinion, but let's see what he says and I'll continue with that option. So while Rob is deciding which chapter ring he wants, I'm going to go ahead and start taking the hands off the movement. So I put it on this little pad. If we take the cover off, you'll see, in fact I'll pick it up, you'll see I need to get the hands off. So to do that, I'm going to put them all pointing in the same direction. I'm also going to protect the dial with this little bit of plastic, which I've made specifically to do that. I'm going to need the crown in there anyway to set the hands, the new hands, to the correct positions. So I'm just going to pop the crown in. That way I can hold the movement and freely rotate the hands. I'm just going to line them up so that the hour and minute pointing in the same direction. Now, what I'm going to be doing is slotting these little sort of plastic shorts over underneath all of the hands at the same time. You don't really need to wait for the 7S26 to stop. It's probably got a few hours of charge in it still, so it's going to be ages before it stops. So I'm just going to do it while the hands are running. So it's quite a tricky process, but once the plastic is under, that just protects the dial. And I'm going to use this hand puller, which needs a bit of adjustment, like so. There we go. So that is going to pull the hands off the stem. Let's do that now, and I'll show you what the new hands are going to look like. So I've removed the hands, I've kept the crown in there. This movement is still running, as we can see on the back. You can see it's still beating away in there. So this makes the setting of the hands a little trickier, but as long as I do it fairly quickly, we should still have the date change at the appropriate time and all of that. So just before we actually do it, I want to show Rob a mock-up of what the hands are going to look like. So we have gone here for, by the way, all of these parts are from DLW. This is, I guess, the first part we're going to be fitting apart from the chapter ring, and this was the polished chapter ring from DLW as well. These are Mercedes hands. So you can see they're the Rolex style Mercedes hands, and we've gone for an orange seconds hand, which I think is going to complement that orange divers text on the dial really nicely, and just add that little color combo. Just as a side note, this Rodico stuff from Bergeon is brilliant. It's glorified blue tack really, but I think it's a little tougher, and especially when you're setting hands, this stuff is brilliant. Really helps to align, hold things in place without scratching anything. So I'm actually just going to use this piece just to pick up the old hands and put them, Takes a light press to pick them up and put them to the side, just so we can use them if we ever need to later. So I've got the hour hand here ready to go on. I'm just going to set the time to a little past midnight. That way we've got the date change happening at the exact right time. Otherwise there's no way of knowing where the hands are pointing on the dial. So to do that, you basically have the crown in, pull the crown and very slowly turn until you start to see the date change, and then immediately when it changes, that's when you know the hour should be pointing directly at 12. So there we go, it's starting to go. I'm just going to go extra slowly here. There we go. So I'm going to set the hour hand exactly to 12 right now, press it in, and then we'll add the minute on. So I've placed the hour on, and I will show you the tool I'm using in a minute. The next job is to line this up for the minute. Now you could just put the minute straight above the hour. What I like to do is set it to 6 o'clock, and actually that way you can see as it comes to 3 o'clock, the day of the week should change as well. So I'm just going to point this right down, place the minute hand pointing exactly to this little line at 12. I find it a little easier to line it up perfectly then, and then we can just test the date change with the hour and minute. So the minute's on 2 now, and as you can see, as we go to the hours, a nice little test is to check it at 3, 6 and 9. So here's 9. When that hour hand is pointing right at the hour, this minute should be pointing straight up. You also want to check it from the side to make sure the hands aren't touching each other as they go. Sometimes they'll freely move, but actually over time it will start to scratch the hour hand with the minute hand. So I've made sure there is a tiny gap in between them basically. Sometimes it's easy to push them on top. So as we go around, let's just check that when the date change happens now, it's virtually impossible to make it happen exactly at 12, but within sort of plus 5 minutes, minus 5 minutes is pretty good. So as you can see, we're going round. So yeah, that's where it happens. So just slightly before 12. This is acceptable really for Seiko movements from the factory. So that all depends on how accurately you place the hour hand with relation to how much you've turned it as well. So it's tough to do, but I'm quite happy with that. And also that all of the hour markers, for example, 3 here, again, it switches the date. 6 is a bit easier to show. Lines up perfectly straight. So those the hour and minutes done. Let's just add loosely the second hand to see what this orange looks like. So I just placed the orange hand a bit of an angle there, but I think that colour really matches nicely with the text on the dial. It's not going to be as bright through the crystal as well. It's quite a nice sized hand. I think it's well worth keeping this orange one, but we'll see what Rob says and continue. So here's the dial with the hand set complete. It does look really nice now. It's all on flush and properly. Everything's running as it should. The dial's not got any scratches or marks or anything or smudges. I've cleaned up the hands and the dial as well. It's a really nice sort of matte black dial on these original SKX007s. Just for a bit of fun, let's have a look at the loom without a case or a crystal. It always glows up really nicely. So there you go with the dial loomed up a bit. It is a bright room I'm in anyway, but you can see that great Seiko loom. The hands are actually quite well colour matched as well. Not exactly the same, but very, very close. This kind of aqua greeny blue loom. So by the way, what I use to set the hands is this hand pressing tool. It's got various diameters of holes in these little plastic bits. Dial essentially goes under here, and these plungers come down to set the hands. Takes some getting used to, but perfectly okay. I might invest in some just handheld tools later. So next we are going to be installing the the polished chapter ring, as I discussed with Rob, and that's going to go in the case. Crystal's going to go on that. I'll get that together and then we'll come back to fit the movement in. For now, the movement can go away in this little container. So what I wanted to do here was just to show you the difference between the crystals. So this is the standard flat SKX crystal. It's got a bit of a beveled edge, giving it that sort of classic look with a bit of distortion around the edges. This is a DLW blue AR coated. As you can see when I go across towards the light, you've got that little blue hint in the colour. It's only a slight blue though on the DLW crystals. I find the Namoki crystals are a little bit darker, but this looks a little bit more refined, I think. It appears quite a lot thicker. It has a double dome, so it's domed on the inside and the outside, so it doesn't really give any magnification effect or anything like that. This should look great. So what I've done is I've taken off the gasket from the original crystal. We're actually going to pop the chapter ring inside there. Now this chapter ring is a bit different to most, as it doesn't have the little foot that goes into there, a little tab, and so this can freely spin in there. It doesn't have any marking, so it's actually a bit easier to fit this one as well. You don't have to worry about setting it so much when you put the movement in. Then we're going to put the gasket, which goes inside here, and then we're going to rest the crystal on top and put it in the press. Again, I won't do this on camera because it takes a little while to get it set up, but essentially you want it nice and flat in there, and then we're just going to apply a little bit of pressure and a few points just to make sure it's seated properly, and I'll be back to show you that result. So here's the crystal in the case only. Seated really well, quite quick actually. It takes a little bit of getting used to figuring out exactly when it is seated properly, and there should be a little bit of the dull kind of edge along there, along the bottom, but a nice double dome, a little bit of that blue AR coming through around the edges already. It's going to look really good with all of the other parts on. So this can be quite tedious, but it's time to make sure this is completely clean, no dust on the inside. One of these little tools is really useful for that. Nice and polished up, cleaned up, and then I'm going to be dropping the movement into the case. So the movement's clean and ready to go. The next thing I'm going to do is take the crown out. Now this is quite tricky to do because you have to hold it while taking the crown out. I found the simplest way to do this is without a movement holder, is to obviously make sure the crown is in its closed position. That little part pops out. Then I'm actually going to get one of these small tools so that I can sort of push on it at the same time as pulling the crown, and it comes out. We need to take that crown out in order to pop the movement back in. I also always hold these upside down, so I find it easier. Just give it a final little clean. I find it easier to locate the crown stem hole, which is about here, with this part of the movement. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this in and pop the crown back in as well. So the movement and crown are back in. I find it easier to, as soon as I've sort of located it, pop the crown through and then press around on this black plastic ring that's holding everything. This is the first look of the watch cased up, and it's looking pretty good. All I'm going to do now is just get into a nice bright light so I can see if there's any marks or any dust inside there. If there is, I'll have to remove the dial, sorry, the whole movement assembly clean it and put it back and just keep doing that until it's perfect, but it's looking pretty good already. So let me go ahead and check that, and as long as it's all good, case back goes on and the inside of the watch is complete. So I've checked for any faults or any bits of dust or anything, and the watch is looking really nice already. I've just put the case back on, crown is in, and we're ready for the bezel. So this is going to be a sub-style bezel. First time I've used one of these. What I typically do is reuse, of course, the standard click spring, which I took out earlier. So you can tune these a little bit, but I'm going to keep this one exactly as it came with the original watch. So that just pops in there. I'll make sure that's nice and flat before I press it. With the DLW bezels, you will need to take the gasket out of the original one. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and pop the bezel on. So I've got the click spring in, I've got the bezel gasket in the new bezel. I'm just going to place it carefully over the top of the watch, of course. I try and keep it quite even. I'm then going to get a 38 size die from the press, and I'm going to use this to snap the bezel on. Hopefully it should rotate lovely, exactly like the standard one. The sound is just slightly different. It's a little bit higher pitched, but the action is very much the same. Nice and smooth. Yeah, really nice. I love DLW quality bezels. They always seem to have a great action to them. Already looking great. The last thing to do now is the insert. So one interesting thing with this sub-style bezel is that you can clearly see these notches at the top. And if I look at the ones at 12, what I'm trying to do is find a position in the bezel where one of those notches is perfectly in line with the insert, which is perfectly in line with the 12 position. Quite tricky to do, but I think it's going to be worth it because that's something that would bother me otherwise. In theory, then all of the other markers should line up to one of those notches as well. So this isn't attached yet. I'm just trying to find the correct position, which I think might be this. That should line up with everything, and it's actually could be a little easier to get this lined up straight away. So I'm going to use one of the 3M tape rings that you get. I'll show you that in a second, and we'll finish off the bezel insert. So here's the sticky ring, a 3M tape, double-sided tape essentially, that you get from most shops. Actually will supply these. DLW do, they're quite nice, nicely cut ones. So I'm going to be placing this inside the actual bezel, and I'll just use a little tool to press it down and get it all nice and flat, and then we'll position that final bezel insert. So here is the final watch. Now this is really quite special. I think it was completely the right choice to use the polished chapter ring, because when you're looking at the watch you do get those reflections of the markers and some of the other colors in there. It looks great. This strap does not do it justice. It will be, I think, on a Jubilee strap code bracelet, which I think is going to suit this perfectly. But just as a side-by-side comparison from what it used to look like before, perhaps not for everyone, but as a fun kind of watch that's a bit modified, a bit flashy, I think this has come out really nice. And great quality parts from DLW, so I appreciate those. These inserts are super highly polished on the numbers, so it's like a mirror finish, which I think goes really well with the chapter ring. The silver Mercedes hands, the orange seconds hand, which lines up or matches, should I say, the text on the dial as well. Classic SKX case, original movement. Is certainly a fun watch, and I think Rob, my friend here in Dubai who I made this for, is going to love it. And and I can't stop looking at it and playing with it. So I'll be sad to let this one go, but I will be making something quite similar for myself as well. Let's just have a look at it on an orange strap as well, because I think that might look really quite cool, and we'll do a loom shot as well. So here's the watch again on an orange strap. Now this is a Zulu diver strap from Gecko. Really nice quality, nice and dense rubber, but yet still soft and supple straight out of the box. I think it goes quite well, and this could be a nice alternative to a bracelet for, you know, a bit more of a bright kind of summer style watch. Let's do a quick loom shot and a wrist shot, and we'll close it off there. You can see the loom glowing nice and bright. The crystal doesn't really hide any of the loom effect, and the colors are those classic Seiko greeny blue colors. Looks really nice on the wrist, has a bit more presence now, especially with this orange strap, than the SKX rubber strap did. Nice and bright colors, nice and reflective in certain angles. I think this is a really fun watch. So thank you to Rob for the idea. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to help me out, and share this video if you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.